Okay, you may start.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and selamat sejahtera. So we're from Group 2. Set 1 will present to you about transformation of the Malaysian economy in terms of GDP, employment and trade. So before we jump into the topic, how about we get to know about a little history about the economic policy through the year. So next slide. Okay, so to ensure that you all see the changes in Malaysia's economic policy, I will use the Rancangan Malaysia RMK as a benchmark. Okay, so Rancangan Malaysia was a 5-year development plan for the Malaysian government. The 5-year plan began with the Rancangan Malaya Pertama. After the establishment of Malaysia in 1963, Rancangan Malaya was replaced by the Rancangan Malaysia Pertama. So, if you can see here, the economic activity of the country during the era of the 50s and 60s was an agriculture-based economy. So the government is implementing various approaches to further develop this sector with intensified marketing of agriculture. So our country also places a lot of emphasis on infrastructure and facilities such as electricity supply, water, building schools, and others. But however, in the 70s, Malaysia was often plagued by racial problems due to the high income gap between the races in Malaysia. So therefore, in this era, the government is focused on bridging this gap and eradicating poverty through the new economic policy or Dasar Ekonomi Baru. So this policy is a series of events from May 13, 1969, namely racial riots due to the country's economy and politics at the time. And in this era as well, Malaysia has also begun to be active in the field of industry under the industrial policy or Dasar Perindustrian, which further boosts industry-related activities. So next slide. Okay, so in this 80s era, Malaysia has begun to focus on the industrial sector by venturing into heavy industries such as car manufacturing, petroleum, ship repair, and so on. Okay, so we move to the next slide to see the 90s and 2000 until now. Next slide. Okay, so from the year 2000 until now, through the 8 RMK until 11 RMK, which emphasize a lot on technology and better quality product. So during this period, Malaysia wants to achieve the status of a developed country and a high income country to the implementation of the Vision 2020 policy or Wawasan 2020 and National Transformation 2050, Transformasi Nasional 2050 lah. Okay, so through these two policies, government emphasis is placed on the aspect wanting to produce a developed, scientific and progressive society. So this is because Malaysia faces the challenge of globalization and a world without borders. So it is also impacting the national economy due to the growing digital economy around the world. So what is digital economy? So digital economy refers to an economy that is based on digital computing technologies. And a digital economy is also referred as the internet economy, new economy, or web economy that is driven by access to smartphones and internet connectivity. So next presenter.
Okay, let me start with some general information on GDP. What's the mean GDP? Gross Domestic Product, GDP, means the total value of final goods and service produced in a country by factors of production belonging to that country or belonging to a foreign country in a year. GDP can be measured using three methods, namely production, expenditure, and income. Okay, first, production methods means summing the value. Okay, GDP has many use such as measuring the rate of economic growth, determining the living.
Doktor tak dengar. Maafkan saya.
In this slide, it is shown the timeline of GDP from 1960 to 2020. As we can see, the GDP is increasing overall in the long run by the line graph. GDP is increasing in the long run because of some factor, that is growth of productivity, demographic changes at the labor force participation. As we can see, in 1985, GDP has increased almost fivefold compared to 1960. This is a successful plan done by the government. They have planned policies such as the new economic policy and plans such as the Malaysia Development Plan to boost the economy, and also foreign direct investment help the economy grow. However, there were dramatic drops in 1998, 2009, and 2020 due to the economic crisis. In 1997, the East Asian crisis affected Malaysia in various ways. The ringgit depreciated sharply, which led to an enormous increase in capital flights. Almost all the country borrowed from the IMF, but Malaysia has taken a different way to recover the economy. While the drop of 2009 is because of the financial crisis 2008. To get up from that situation, the Malaysian government has carried out an expansionary fiscal policy. The main goal of expansionary fiscal policy is to drive up domestic demand, stimulate the economy to close the recessionary gap, and decrease the unemployment rate. If we see the GDP of 2010, it shows the fiscal policy is working, and the drop of 2020 is due to the COVID-19. Because of the COVID-19, the government has decided to take an action, that is Movement Control Order (MCO). Almost all sector of the economy has ceased to function. This caused GDP decline in 2020. That's all from me. Thank you.
Next, I will show the changes in contributions in the sector of GDP. As we can see from the line graph, it shows the share of the economic sector in the GDP from 1987 to 2019 in Malaysia. As we know, GDP according to the output method shows the value of output contributed by various sectors. Based on this graph, we can see that the value of output for the tertiary sector is the highest. So it shows that the contribution of the tertiary sector is the highest to national output. Then, the importance of the tertiary economic sector can be identified based on its rate of contribution to national output. The economic sector that recorded the highest contribution rate was the main contributor to the national output. During the 1970s, rice cultivation was overwhelmingly carried out by the Malays, and large numbers of poor people were engaged in rice cultivation. The government aimed to improve rice cultivators' income through productivity growth with the help of subsidies irrigation, chemical fertilizers, and pesticides, and the price support of the rice. In mid-1980s, the government emphasized the policy of looking towards its influence by the experience in Japan and South Korea, and target certain heavy industries such as petrochemicals, steel and automobiles on the basis of joint ventures with significant possibilities for Bumiputra participation into modern industrial sectors. During the 1990s, the government privatized new international airports, highways, and telecommunications. There was huge expansion of export-oriented industries, considered with rapid rise in investment in infrastructure. It has played... Yes, sure.
Thank you. Thank you, Liana. I will continue this presentation about employment by economic sectors from 1960 until 2020, where the change is from primary sector to the secondary and tertiary sector. This change because of the government efforts to expand social services as well as increase its involvement in economic activities, and this is related with RRJP, Rangka Rancangan Jangka Panjang. Based on this time series, all the sectors have their own trend, which is increase and decline. During pre-independence period, agriculture remains an important sector of Malaysia economy. British colonizer will establish the agriculture policy and focus on primary sector, and the GDP is keep increase until this time series, which is I take the time series start from 1916. So when the GDP is remaining increased, the supply for the labor force for this sector is increased too. Okay, doctor. But for the secondary and tertiary sector are not too popular at this time. That's why labor force at this time are not too much other than primary sector. Plus that during 1985, Malaysia having a crisis commodity short. This crisis made the economic collapse and caused problems for the new industry, most of which had just begun the production, and it affect the Perbadanan Industri Berat Malaysia, HICOM. But after the period when it's come to the adjustment to the crisis, starting 1987, we can see the trend for labor for secondary and tertiary sector will begin to increase. This is because Malaysia managed the crisis by their own. Example, using the contractionary fiscal policy. Changes in the structure of the Malaysia economy can be seen from 1988. then the structure are changed to the manufacturing and services sector. By 1988, this trend is continued because the Malaysia economy had entered the second high growth phase in the post-independence era, except for the primary sector. The primary sector started from 1988 until now. This sector start collapse because of the globalization and integrated value chains. That's why the labor force for this sector is declined too. But for the other sector like secondary and tertiary sector were increasing due to the large role of government. Among the policy influencing the increase was the heavy industrial policy like Dasar Perindustrian Negara. This contributes to the increase in labor force. And continue with the tertiary sector, services employment share has been on the rise since 1988. This is because of the policy, which is the second industrial master plan. And after that, for the secondary and tertiary sector facing a decline trend because of a few crises such as ASEAN financial crisis during 1997-1998 and the global financial crisis 2008-2009. But Malaysia can recover from the crisis with many strategies. And now, start 2019, we need to face pandemic COVID-19 and also make the labor force are decline. But until now, second and third industry are significant and contribute to the economy of Malaysia. And at the same time, supply for the labor force for this both sector are increased too. And for the primary sectors, they have their contribution to the Malaysia economy, but not too high. That's all from me. Thank you.
Alright. Next, I will going to explain about three topics. The first one is employment by occupation, and second one the percentage of labor force by skill category, and the last one is the Malaysian gross national income per capita. Alright, the first one is employment by occupation. We can see at table 1.0 employment by occupation Malaysia from 2016 until 2019. I will not explain the all item because it's take time. I will explain the three items. The first one is total. You can see in 2016 until 2019, total employed person by occupation increased. Why? Because due to economic progress, abundant employment opportunity as well, and as low unemployment rates of around 3.3% and 3.4%. Alright. The second one I will explain about number 4 and number 5. Number 4 is number 4 and number 5 and number 6. Number 5 is service and sales workers, and number 6 is agriculture, forestry, livestock, and fisher workers. We can see there are different, there are significant difference between number 5 and number 6. We can see number 5 the large number, number 6 the small number. This is because Malaysia are focused on service sector compared to the traditional sector such as agriculture, fishery, and livestock. Next. This occupation is classified by MASCO 2013. There are 9 categories. The first one manager, and the last one is elementary occupation. Next. Next, Azri. Alright. No. Slide sebelumnya, Azri. Slide sebelum. Alright. We're going to the second topic I will present today, the percentage of labor force by skill category from 1982 until 2018. We can see there are 3 categories: skill, semi-skill, and low skill. We're going to 1982 until 2000. We can see category skill is the smallest share of labor force, and the largest is semi-skill, and the second largest is low skill category. But we can see at 2001 until 2018, they exchange both category skill become the second largest, and category semi-skill still same, become a largest share of labor force, and low skill extend to a small share of labor force. Why? This because due to progress of education in our country, which is the government emphasized the education system order to produce a high quality of generation in terms of theory and practical. Next, Azri. Okay, the last one is the Malaysian gross national income per capita from 1970 until 2019. We can see at 1970, JNI per capita for Malaysia is 370 US dollar, convert to ringgit Malaysia 1070, and we can see the graph increase every year until 2019. We can see JNI from 2019 is 45,212, but I will explain why JNI per capita in 1997 is decreased dramatically because Asian financial crisis 1997. Malaysia was able to get out from the financial crisis in 1997 because there were action taken by Tun Dr. Mahathir as a prime minister, such as lowering interest rates, stabilizing the exchange rates, controlling capital flow, and maintaining financial stability. And we can see at 2009 also JNI per capita also decreased dramatically because of global financial crisis in 2009, refer to the period of extreme stress in the global financial market and banking system between mid-2007 and early 2009. That's all for me. Thank you.
Okay, now we move to the international trade. So I will focus on Malaysia international trade in services. So this is graph of Malaysian trade in services from 1985 to 2020. If you look from this graph, we can see there's a big change in trade of services from 2019 to 2020. So I will only focus on that chart. Next. This is the data export of services by component in 2015 to 2020. So from this data, we can see that there is increase and decrease in export of services from 2019 to 2020. Okay, next. We move to the data import services. Okay, so after looking at both data, we can see that in 2020, Malaysia export of services record a decrease and as compared in the previous year because of the decrease in travel and transport. At the same time, import of services also decreased, but relatively a slower decline than export of services. So because of the big decline in the export of services compared to import of services, the trade in services deficit widened that turned into the highest deficit ever of Malaysia international trade in services. Other business services was the highest export services in 2020. However, although this component had the highest number, the export decreased by 7.6% because of the lockdown measure in many countries that affect technical and trade-related activities. The travel domain of Malaysia services trade all this while has faced a challenging situation which led to the highest deficit in services 2020. The industry that due to this pandemic turned into deficit for the first time in 30 years from a surplus of 30,834 million in 2019. Export of travel decreased 84.7% because of lower number of tourist arrival. It is because the implementation of lockdown as well as travel bans to all countries. But service that is about digital transformation seem to perform much better during the COVID-19 crisis. Telecommunications, computer and information services has seen an opportunity throughout the year 2020 in the form teleworking, video streaming, and other digital services. As part of this component increased by 7.9%, at the same time, import rose by 14.8% due to the increase in subscription of streaming service, especially for online movie. In 2020, the USA overtook Singapore by being the top destination of Malaysia services export mostly in manufacturing services and other leading market for export since 2010 become the second destination pulled by export of travel. This followed by United Kingdom, Hong Kong and China. That's all for me. Thank you.
So I will present about trade by merchandise and by commodity, and I will focus on export only. From this data, we can conclude that Section 7, which is machinery and transport equipment, which was ranked 6 in 1970s, 1.6% became the biggest contributor in 2015 at 41.9% of export due to the impact of the robust manufacturing activity. Next. So okay. And the movement can be shown in the graph. So why this happened? Malaysia economic performance peaked in the early 1980s through the mid 1990s as the economic experienced sustained rapid growth, averaging almost 8% annually. High level of foreign and domestic private investment play a significant role as the economy diversify and modernize. One heavily dependent on primary products such as rubber and tin. Malaysia today is upper middle income country with a multi-sector economy based on services and manufacturing. Malaysia is one of the world's largest exporter of semiconductor components. Okay. So from this data, we can look that in section 7, the movement of blue is grow up from 1970 to 2010. This is because of Malaysia benefit from the global demand in the usage of mobile devices, storage devices, optoelectronic and embedded technology. Okay, next. Okay, this is by commodity. The three main crops, which is rubber, palm oil and cocoa, have dominated agriculture export ever since, although the nation's share of the world production of these crops declined steadily during the last 2 decades. So I want to explain about one of the main agriculture sector in Malaysia, which is palm oil. Next. From commodity table and palm oil temperature data, it can be seen that exports are increasing every year. So why this happen? Palm oil production is vital for the economy of Malaysia, which is the second largest producer of the commodity. And from the time series data, there is also an export fluctuation from 2012 to 2021. So why this happened? This is because of tension with EU
export issue with India, and labor exploitation. That's it for me. Thank you.
I will continue in issues and challenges in Malaysia agriculture. The major issues and challenges facing Malaysian agriculture is structural and supply side in nature. Malaysia needs to learn from these new developments and its past experience to manage the transformation of agriculture for sustained economic growth. Analysts forecast that food needs will rise at extraordinary rates worldwide. This is due to the expected rapid increase in population, rise levels of nutrition as income levels increase, and changing consumption patterns resulting from lifestyle changes. At the same time, greater awareness toward health and the need to maintain a healthy lifestyle will increase the demand for nutritious food that are low in calories, fats, and salts, but high in fiber, minerals, and vitamins. So increasing demand causing society to be more competitive would result in more hardworking and productive people. Malaysia has the right ingredients and the necessary requisite economic. Okay, Doctor. So in the following slide, strategies to transform and move forward Malaysian agriculture as suggested by my friends. So next, issues and challenges in Malaysian manufacturing. Yes, Doctor. Right, Doctor. So in 1987, for the first time in nation history, manufacturing overtook agriculture to become the leading sector of the economy. The method, uh, sorry, Dr. Sorry, Doctor, I don't have a graph for this part. So, I can hear you, Doctor. Ya, Doktor. So I will continue. So the manufacturing sector has played a vital role in the economic transformation in Malaysia. So Malaysia has contributed to attract huge investment in the manufacturing sector despite a challenging economic environment. So this is the issues that I want to highlight here. First is lack of innovation, which is resources for research and development, R&D. And the second is labor intensive industry, which is talent gap. So next.
Okay, for the last presenter, I will continue discussion about solution for the agriculture. Okay, okay, thank you, Doctor.
Okay, Doctor. So, question from, wait, okay. Okay, so from, I picked from Murni UKM. So the question is, what are the effects of globalization and digitalization on the national economy? Okay, so I will answer it in a short answer. So indeed, okay, so globalization has made our world borderless and challenge for most countries lah, especially for Malaysia, because our country has the status of a developing country and needs to move in line with progress like other developed countries lah. But I think globalization has made our activity, business can be done easily and quickly, especially to the national economy because digital economy has begun. But I think digital economy has made our country's economy increase because it for example, we have a growing digital economy, which is at the highly competitive, such as e-wallet, Touch and Go, Grab, and so on. So that's why I think globalization really make our economy increase, but at the same time give challenge to our country. So that's answer. Thank you.
Can the next group continue with the presentation, Doctor? Okay, all right. Just wait for a while. Doctor, you have to unmute your mic.
You mute.
All right.
Excuse me, doctor. I think I cannot open the mic because it said video sharing is disabled by the administrator.
Okay. I will start. Assalamualaikum and good morning to Dr. Mohd Shukri Hajinoor, our lecturer, and to all my friends. So today we are from Group 2, Set 2. We are going to present about the agriculture in terms of development and challenges in the agricultural sector in Malaysia, NAPs and the future. So let me start with the agriculture in the Malaysian economy in the context of structural transformation in the Malaysian economy. So as what we know, Malaysia gained its independence in the 1957, and during that time, our economy was essentially agricultural based. So over time, this sector could no longer support the growing economy due to other factors as well as GDPs and the population. So Malaysia has to introduce the industrial import substitution policies to transform the economy into the more resilient sector. And if you look at the example, rubber and tin, it was one of the major foreign exchange earner. But then, due to the national policy, shifted to industrialization in mid 1970s. It started with the import substitution policies, then later to export-oriented and heavy industrial activities. And now, as what we can see, Malaysia has evolved from the agricultural base to production base, and later the service-based economy. So let's move to the next part, which is the importance of the agricultural sector during the early phase of development. I would like to pass it to Lavanya.
Hello, hi, my name is Lavanya. So I would like to describe about the importance of agriculture. Next slide, please. So the first importance of agriculture is agriculture sector is backbone of the economy. At independence, agriculture sector contributed 39.3% to GDP. After independence, economy underwent a diversification, so the contribution declined. And in 1980, still it contributed 22.9% of total GDP. So the second importance of agriculture sector is agriculture has contributed to increase food supplies. Before 1960, 55% of the rice consumed domestically was produced locally and fed a population of less than 8 million. By 1970, the country was producing 90% of the rice consumed domestically and feeding almost 11 million people. So the Third importance of agriculture sector is major sources of the country's foreign exchange earning. Between 1917 and 2016, export earning grew by 200%. During periods of economic difficulty, agriculture was the sector that the country resorted to in support of its export earning, demonstrating the resilience of the sector. The export-oriented part of the agriculture sector is significant contributor of foreign exchange earning and through investment to higher income and employment. So the fourth importance of agriculture sector is employment. At independence, agriculture sector generated 58.3% of total employment. Of total employment in 1999, 45.38% was rural based, of which 37% was involved in agriculture. Agriculture was a major source of employment, providing 15.69% of total employment in 1998. Next slide, please. Next slide. So as you see, agriculture still contributed to GDP and employment throughout the year, still in 2018. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Lavanya, for that well-explained point. So let's move to the agricultural development policy. Yes, Doctor. Doctor, do you have something to say?
Yes, Doctor.
All right. Thank you, Doctor, for that enlightenment. So let's move to the agriculture development policy in the early British colonial agricultural policy from 1874 until 1906. So I would like to pass it to Afifa.
Okay, thank you, Akmal. Okay, I will continue with agriculture development policy. For the early British agricultural policy towards the Malay populace was to leave the Malays in the rural areas and encourage them to maintain the traditional way of life, cultivating paddy. Two factors underlay this policy is British paternalism and political-economic reasons. The increase of non-agrarian immigrants contributed to the need for a stable rice supply. Next, please. So the government insisted that the Malays should stay in the kampongs and supply rice cheaply. The introduction of rubber changed the economic map of Malaya completely. Many Europeans and some Chinese own rubber plantation, but the British discouraged Malays from planting rubber because they needed a domestic rice supply due to warfare in Europe and unstable rice supply from Thailand, Burma, and Indochina. Next. So after the independence, which is 1957 until now, next slide. After the independence, the Malayan government encouraged the Malays to cultivate rubber. So the Federal Land Development Authority, FELDA, was set up in 1956 and FELDA settlers were mostly Malay. It is the government efforts to develop the rural areas eventually brought the Malay socio-economic development. This platform is to promote economic advancement through rural settlements. It is also to provide land for the landless and to create a number of small urban centers on the outskirts of the residential areas. Next is National Agri-Food Policy, NAP, which is 2011 until 2020. The objective is to ensure safe food supply, making the agri-food industry, and increase the income levels of farmers. There are 8 ideas. food securities, availabilities and affordability, high-value agriculture development, sustainable agriculture development, maximizing income generation, private investment, which for the transformation of modern agriculture, empowering human capital, agriculture modernization driven by R&D, resource and development, technology and innovation, lastly, excellence of agricultural support services. NAP will be discussed truly by the other presenter. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Afifa. So before we move to the NAPs, I would like to share with you just a brief idea about the economic diversification from since the independence and until now. So as what I've mentioned before, when Malaysia gains its independence in the 1957, our economy is more focused to the agriculture and commodity base. But now, as what we can see, Malaysia plays host to robust manufacturing and service sectors, which have then propelled the country to become a leading exporter of electrical appliances, for example, parts and also components. And due to this openness to trade and investment, which has become a tool in employment creation and income growth, it has seen that 40% of jobs in Malaysia linked to export activities. And it is expected for Malaysia to achieve its transition from an upper middle income economy to a high income economy by 2024. So let's move to the NAP, which is, yes? Okay. Okay. All right, thank you, Doctor, for that explanation. So now we can move to the NAPs, which is the National Agricultural Policy for NAP 1, 2, and 3. So let's talk about the objectives. I'd like to pass it to Yang Rashidah.
Okay, thank you, Akmal. So I'm going to proceed with the National Agricultural Policy 1, 2, and 3. So since 1980s, the agriculture sector in Malaysia began to show a downward trend, and this deterioration had sparked the anxieties of the government and those who are involved in the development process of this traditional sector in the economy. So such undesirable development has forced the government to restructure its agricultural sector undertakings through the establishment of the first National Agriculture Policy in 1984. So this first policy was formulated in response to the inability of previous policies to eradicate poverty and slow performance of the agriculture sector as the country's engine of economic growth. So the first NAP was established with the objective to maximize agricultural income through optimal utilization of resources. So during this period, Malaysia has been abundant with labour and adequate land suitable for agriculture. Does the development of the new land creates employment in the rural areas and at the same time increases the production of agro-food products for local consumption? So there are challenges faced by the agriculture sector, especially in meeting the demand of agro-food products in the domestic and global market that make the reason why we need an AP2. So the second National Agriculture Policy, NAP2, was the extension of the NAP1, NAP. That's why the main objective of the NAP2 remained the same as the objective of the first National Agriculture Policy. However, this policy has a specific target, which is going to be presented by Shasha after this, that makes it has some specific objective. The specific objective are balanced development between agriculture and other sectors, enhancement of integration with other economic sectors, expansion and development of the food industry, wider and effective participation of Bumiputra in modern and commercial agriculture, and attainability of sustainable development. Next, after the government realized the effect of the 1997 to 1998 Asian financial crisis and the liberalization of the financial markets to Malaysia's economy, they decided to establish the third National Agriculture Policy, NAP3. This policy was a revised version of the NAP2, which has the same main objective but different specific objective, which are to enhance food security, increase productivity and competitiveness, deepen linkages with other sectors, create new source of growth of this sector, and conserve and utilize natural resources on a sustainable basis. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Rashida, for that well explanation. So now let's move to the targets of NAPs. I would like to pass it to Shasha.
Okay, thank you, Ahmad. And hi, Assalamualaikum, everyone. I'll be talking about the targets of the National Agriculture Policy, which is NAPs. The agriculture policy was established in two periods of time, before independence and after independence. Before independence, in the year 1948 until 1957, the target or the focus of the agriculture policy was on how to enhance the income of farmers, to reduce the poverty in the agricultural sector, and to minimize the intersectoral inequality between the agricultural and non-agricultural sector. On the other hand, after the independence, which is in the year starting from 1957, NAP1, 2, and 3 were established. For NAP1, the focus is to address the issue of rural poverty and the imbalance of income between the commercial and traditional farmers. In response to the inability of the previous policy to eradicate poverty and because of slow performance of the agriculture sector. Moving on to the NAP2. This NAP2 was aimed to address the challenges faced by the agriculture sector, like meeting the demand for agro-food and putting the greater emphasis on productivity and efficiency of agro-food production so it can enable the sector to contribute to economic growth. The government also focuses on giving incentives that benefit the smallholder farmers in all subsectors through the development of the new infrastructure and subsidy programs. Besides the new land, areas were open for industrial crops and agro-food. Lastly, for NAP3, it also focused on addressing the agriculture challenges faced by the agricultural sector, such as the changes in the economic structure due to lack of arable land, shortage of labor due to competition with other sectors. It also focuses on the availability of food for domestic consumption. Lastly, this NAP3 aims to set in place the enabling and supporting measures and the conducive environment to promote growth in the agricultural sector. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Shasha. So now let's move to the achievements of the NMP1, NMP2, and NMP3 from the 1992 until 2010. So I will pass it to Rushdie.
Next, we turn to the achievement in National Agricultural Policy 1, NAP1. The achievement is summarized in the line graph. The graph involves the production of agricultural crops from 1987 to 1991. The production of this crop is paddy, rubber, rice, and dried cocoa beans. From 1987 to 1991, paddy production has recorded a continuous increase from a production of 1,626,699 in 1987 to 1,926,354 in 1991. The continuous.
Rushdie? I'm sorry for interrupting. Can you wait a second because the slide is not moving? So there will be a next presenter to share the slide. Just wait for a moment. I'm sorry for the disturbance, everyone.
Okay, can you see my slide now?
Yes, Afifa.
All right. Okay.
Zikri, you can proceed.
Okay. From the 1987 to 1991, the continuous increase in paddy production is due to sufficient land research, and the land has been used to be optimally. Okay. Next, we turn to rubber production in the no. In the same slide. Next, we turn to rubber production in 1987 to 1988. Rubber production record an increase. However, in 1989 to 1991, rubber production experienced a continuous decline. The decline in rubber production was due to seasonal factor that made rubber trees less productive. Okay, next, no, in the same slide. Next relates to the rice production. From 1987 to 1981, rice production, same with paddy production, has recorded a continuous increase from our production. The continuous increase in rice production is due to the sophistication of technology used by the effectively. In the last one, finally, the production of dried cocoa beans experienced an unstable development. We can see with the low increase and have a decrease also. However, the production of the dried cocoa beans has a well increased because in 1987 the production 100,000 175 metric and became 110,377 in 1991. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.
All right, I will continue with achievement NAP2 and NAP3. Next slide. For the first point is increase agricultural yields gradually according to the area planted with fruit or vegetable. Second, increase in import and export of agricultural product as well as improvement in the quality of agricultural product. As we can see in the statistic, agriculture in 1980 only started with cocoa and palm oil. At the time, the hectare of land used was only 1,000 hectare. In 1990, the government has started other agriculture such as fruit, vegetable, rice, and rubber. At the 2008, the most widely used hectare of land is palm oil because it makes a high contribution in our economy. So the government also managed to expand to all agriculture that has been grown in Malaysia. Next slide. Next point is rehabilitation and development of agriculture was successfully implemented through the Malaysia Development Plan. There are several processes in this implementation now as MBP1 until MDP9. In this graph, it shows the target and achievement that have been done through the two programs. In the MDP9, we can see the target achievement in this program successfully implemented through two programs. First, replanting. For the second is consolidation and rehabilitation. Other achievement is first, decrease of agricultural land use and land productivity has grown. Next, high production cost and output per worker has grown. And lastly, achievement smallholder and dependent on field worker. That's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, next one, I will proceed to the imports between Malaysia with other countries. Next slide. Okay, in Malaysia, there are two types of agriculture, which is plantation and fruit productions. So on the plantation side, we are doing very well, but on the food production side, we are way behind our neighboring countries. Lots of farmers that have started to realize that plantation a lot easier to maintain than food crops, and palm oil price are relatively stable. So they quit planting food crops and start planting oil palms. Some of them even sold their agriculture lands. So Malaysia is one of the most developed countries in Southeast Asia, that major importer of food, especially in the meat sector, dairy milk, seafood and cocoa. So first, dairy milk. Almost all dairy products is import include low fat and whole milk powder and other solid dairy. It will be used to produce sweetened condensed milk, yogurt and fluid milk. So mostly the product that we got from New Zealand, US and Australia, as these three countries are the major suppliers for dairy products. The next one is cocoa. Malaysia is the largest cocoa processor. Number 3, beef and seafood.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. So I think I will pass the next to continue. Shafika.
Okay, I will continue. Doctor. Next, I will continue the current issues that ones that still lingering in Malaysian agricultural sector. Next slide, please. Firstly, agriculture sector is relatively low growth rate. Agriculture has a low growth rate compared to the manufacturing sector because of the lack of capital inputs to the rapid transformation, structural change and integration with the manufacturing. Because of the better, higher and steady return generated by the manufacturing sector, preference for the capital to be invested in the manufacturing firms. Agricultural investment are in many ways highly risky, faced with the uncertainties due to the vagaries of weather, disease and price fluctuations. Thus, agricultural portfolio remains least attractive to the investors. Secondly, difficulties in accessing either land. It is quite hard for the farmers to get access to the either land, which the information on the either land development fund must be made more easily accessible, such as how to apply for the funds, including simplified the information on available either land and clear directory for the leasing or purchasing either land. Furthermore, access to the land must take into consideration the tenets of justice and equity. There are many issues surrounding the land rights of the orang asli. This is an issue that crops out throughout the developing world and that one Malaysia must be proactive in addressing. Next point is insufficient R&D in food crops. Factors like changes in climate, disease and pest infestations are vulnerable in agriculture. In the case of large-scale agriculture, disease outbreaks will be the major problem to get control in order to get the good quality and management. Research and development has been important process in making a better agriculture sector for this country, especially in food crops. However, growing food requires a lot of manpower and turnover rate is high. Thus, to overcome the shortage of food crops, most of these products are continuously imported from the other countries and causing weak currency. Moreover, shortage of water and labour. Process of Malaysia focus a higher emphasis on the industrial and manufacturing sector as it undergoes industrialization. As a result, the number of people interested in working in agriculture, particularly young people, is decreasing. Youth migration becomes tradition, leaving the agricultural fields to the old who are unable to continue farming. Other than that, agriculture is both a major cause and casualty of water scarcity. This is because crop production critically depends on soil moisture in the photosynthesis process. Next slide. Plus, poor productivity. Process of agriculture take a slow pace of replanting. Thus, they still using traditional farming, which is obviously yields lower productivity. Poor resource endowments, minimal use of inputs such as fertilizer, improved seeds and adverse policies that continue for a long time period have been identified as the major causes of the low and declining performance of the agricultural sector in Malaysia. For example, most farmers do not have the facility or technology to store farm produce and means of transport, making the management of agricultural products quality become less competitive than manufacturing products. Besides that, agriculture waste and pollution, like the other aspect of development activities, agriculture too has been a major source of environmental pollution and waste generation. Environmental pollution is any changes of any elements of the environment that can cause harmful effects. Meanwhile, agricultural waste refers to the waste produced as a result of various agricultural operations. It includes waste from farms, harvest waste, and pesticides. Some uneducated farmers mishandle pesticides containers, thereby resulting in unpredictable environmental hazards that will lead to health complications and threatening the safety of the community. And now, lastly, high dependency on the government subsidies. The subsidy could cause high dependency of its recipients on the government, as the farmers have been subsidized for many years.
Yeah. Yes, Doctor.
Yes, Doctor. Okay, I will pass to the next presenter, Alias.
Okay, we wait a minute for the slide to reopen.
Can you see the slide?
Not yet.
Now can you see the slide?
Still can't see the slide.
Right. Okay, can you see the slide?
Okay, I
Yes.
can see the slide.
Okay, sorry.
So I will present about the solution to our issues just now. So for the first one is to increase the food production. A systematic and integrated approach similar to rubber and palm oil plantation should be created for other food crops, and more should be allocated to R&D in food crops. Encourage large-scale and organized farming, intensifying land use, improving ergonomic practices, as well as using modern technologies and management. So next is problems of land size. Smallholders are encouraged to practice group farming by consolidating individual plots into a single farm. Next, encourage private sector investment. Introduce several incentive examples by encouraging the production of quality and safe products through the scheme called the Farm Accreditation Scheme Malaysia. And next, increase rate of development in rural areas to discourage rural youth from migrating to urban areas for better paying jobs. They can also have additional sources of income. Production of primary commodities will be reoriented to improve productivity and competitiveness through integrated program with livestock, wider crop practices, and merchandisation. Next, transforming type of farming. Traditional farming or traditional farming to commercial farming increase productivity, competitiveness with particular focus on commercialization. And lastly is facilitating transfer of knowledge. Many farmers did not bother about the restriction because they were tempted by the higher yield. For example, they were only supposed to use herbicide for 2 harvests, but they use it up to 8 harvests. So we should organize workshop for local farmers with the help of agencies such as the Muda Agriculture Development Authority and Kemubu Agricultural Development Authority. So next slide. Afifa can. Okay, so next is for the discussion. Next slide, Afifa. Okay. So agriculture remain as important sector in Malaysia. The agricultural sector still play an important role as a food providers, create employments and generate earnings from export products. Overall, the Malaysian government plans to transform agricultural sector for growth appears to be achievable, provided Malaysia is able to take advantage of the windows of opportunities that are available. Malaysia seems to be heading on the right track by focusing its effort on new agriculture such as biotechnology and higher value added products. A lot of study has also demonstrated that the Malaysian agriculture industry and specifically the food subsector have recently seen improve in its performance. Nevertheless, it is critical that Malaysia deepens its venture into specialized niches to enhance competitiveness via technological changes, innovation, and improvements, as these key elements are proven to assist in sustaining and enhancing international advantage. In the future, if Malaysia manage to solve all the problems that have been around for the sectors for many years, I believe that Malaysia can improve the productiveness of all plants and also be one of the powerful country in agriculture. That's all from me, Anas. Thank you.
All right. All right, Doctor. So we would like to pick a question from group 8 set 1. So the question is why the youth in rural areas nowadays are not interested and leave the agriculture sector. So the reason why is, I believe, is due to the stigma or the mentality of the from the youth nowadays. You know, we are influenced by the social media. From what people show on the social media, they portrays a very high-end life. You know, so that's why people nowadays, the youth, they want more. They want to have extravagant life, or maybe something more that can suit the image of the so-called good or rich people. And if you look at the British involvement in the early phase, the Malays they are fixated in the rural areas, while the Indians are fixated on the estate. So that's why I believe the youth nowadays, they want to get out from that circle and experience more to be different from what their ancestors have faces. So I think that's the reason why the youth nowadays, they are not interested enough into the agriculture sector. I hope that's answering the question.
Setiu, Doctor, setiu.
Okay, thank you, Doctor.
Okay, Assalamualaikum and good day to Doctor and my fellow friends. Today, we want to discuss the topic about service sector. We are from group 3, set 2. So, this is our group member. So, firstly, I want to tell you guys what is the service sector. The service sector produces intangible goods, more precisely services instead of goods, and according to the US Census Bureau, it comprises various service industries including warehousing and transportation services, information services, securities and other investment services, professional services, waste management, healthcare, and social assistance, and arts, entertainment, and recreation. Countries with economies centered around the service sector are considered more advanced than industrial or agricultural economies. The service or tertiary sector is the third piece of a three-part economy. The first economic sector, the primary sector, covers the farming, mining, and agricultural business activities in the economy. The secondary sector covers manufacturing and business activities that facilitate the production of tangible goods from the raw material produced by the primary sector. So the service sector, though classified as the third economic sector, is responsible for the largest portion of the global economy's business activity. Next, there are a lot of examples of service sector, which is the service sector provides services rather than producing material commodities. Activities in the service sector include the first sector is hospitality, that any service that hosts guests such as hotels and restaurants. Secondly, the sector of transportation, the daily transportation service such as a train or taxi. Then healthcare services such as a hospital or clinic. Next, the travel services such as a flight or tour, media such as a newspaper, blog or video, financial services such as a bank that offers bank accounts, loans and investment, the sector of insurance, services that cover risk for a fee, education institution and companies such as a university or professional training company. Next, the sector of entertainment such as a video game, theme park or movie, wellness-related services such as a spa, retailing such as a fashion shop, marketing services such as an event, and sales services such as a real estate agent. Let's move to the next slide.
Okay, technology in service industry. Technology, specifically information technology system, is shaping the way businesses in the service sector operate. Businesses in this sector are rapidly placing more focus on what is becoming known as the knowledge economy, or the ability to surpass competitor by understanding what target customer want and need, and operate in a way that meets those wants and needs quickly with minimal cost. In nearly all industries within this sector, businesses adopt new technology to bolster production, increase speed and efficiency, and cut down on the number of employees required for operation. This cut down on costs and improves income and revenue stream. Next. Okay. The table show the sectoral contribution to GDP growth. This is comparison between ASEAN countries. If we look at Malaysia, in 1980, the highest sector that contribute to our GDP growth is from industry sector with 47.2%, and the second highest is from service sector, followed by agriculture sector in third place. And in 1930, we still see the same trend, which the main sector is from industry sector. But in 2000, a change occurred, which shows the service sector be a main sector in our GDP growth, with 67%, and followed by industry sector with 38%. Okay.
We cannot hear you, Rata.
Sorry for the delay. So now the sectoral composition of total employment. So strong performance in Malaysia's service sector has been the key to recent growth in the country's economy. So service industry actually account for the largest share of Malaysian employment. So for the graph, we can see that service graph has been stood out different from the agriculture, manufacturing, mining, and constructions, where from 1985, from 30%, the share goes up to more than 60% in 2016. So employment in the Malaysian service sector grew at an impressive annual rate throughout the year, as government policies have helped support the demand for services in Malaysia. Under the 9th Malaysian Plan, the Malaysian government has increased its investment in physical infrastructure, with particular emphasis on expanding its transport and container port infrastructure. These policies will likely increase the demand for construction, engineering, financial, airport, travel, and tourism service, and other services related to the development and operation of transport infrastructure. The Malaysian government also aims to promote manufacturing-related services such as research and development (R&D), product design, and central utility supply and cold chain storage for the food processing industry. The government hopes that the initiative will help them lengthen the country's value chain and thus increase demand for Malaysian goods and services. So here we can see that the employment statistic for second quarter in 2021 and sustainable development goals. So what is sustainable development goals? SDG is also called as global goals, was introduced in the year 2015 by state members of United Nations. So why this is related to the service sector? Because Malaysia, as one of the United Nations state members, is also committed to implementing the SDG. The commitment proved when Malaysia presented the Voluntary National Report (VNR) to high-level political forum, the United States, on Malaysia's SDG progress. The SDG's achievement has resulted from implementation of the 11th Malaysia Plan. Various participants involved in SDG efforts are the states, government agencies, non-government organization, the private sector, the civil society organization. The 11th Malaysian Plan aims to enhance the bottom 40 or B40 quality of life and increase their income by 2020. Other than the government is also planning accessibility of B40 for affordable housing, basic amenities and good health services. So the employment, so the fifth SDG goal, which is gender equality, is also one of the government aims. This is proven when the labour participation rate for female increased to 54%. The government has acknowledged women's role as a decision maker and in top management position. We can see data provided by the Department of Statistics Malaysia shows that there are almost 100.1 million vacancies or unfilled jobs that are ready to be offered to the people. We need to utilize the opportunity because day by day, countries are consuming more manufactured product. Therefore, parties like Malaysian government must aggressively play the roles to ensure a strong finish for the sector to compete with other developing countries. So from me.
Okay, for this slide, during the period of 2011 till 2014, the growth of the services sector was largely driven by strong domestic demand. The wholesale and retail trade subsector expanded at an average annual rate of 6.7%, reflecting strong household spending, increased tourist arrivals, and rising incomes, as shown in the graphs. The communication subsector grew at a rate of 8.8% per annum, driven mainly by strong demand for data communication services. The transport and storage subsector maintained growth at 5% per annum due to higher growth in passenger travel and land transport activities. The finance and insurance subsector expanded at a rate of 4.7% per annum due to the rapid increase in financial activities and the buoyancy of the capital market. Next slide. Okay, thank you, Doctor. Moving on to the next slide. Productivity in the services sector grew at an average rate of 2.8% per annum. The ICT subsector recorded the highest productivity growth with an increase of 14.3%, followed by the services by 8.2%. Okay, meanwhile, finance and insurance as well as transportation and storage expanded at 4.5% and 3.4% per annum respectively. All right, productivity. Okay, thank you, Doctor. Next slide. Right, thank you. Next slide. Alright, for this one, in this slide, I think it might be useful to take a more disaggregated and detailed analysis of the export performance of the manufacturing sector for us to better understand the structural changes taking place within the sector. In terms of the composition of manufactured exports, the machinery and transport equipment industry is by far the largest contributor, accounting for almost 63% of total manufactured exports. And this can be said that among all the subsectors stated there, machinery and transport equipment subsector was the most exported subsectors in service sector at that particular moment, which is above the average. I think that's all from me. Thank you. I will pass it to the next person. Yep. Yep.
Okay, I will continue with the next slide. It's regarding about the manufacture export. So it's more to the merchandise export. So merchandise export is a method of offering retail goods for the sale in foreign consumer market. So from the line graph, we can see that the highest percentage that contribute was in 1999 and 2000, which is around about 80% from overall. After that, All right. How about this, sir? This one, the export ratio of the service industry. Yeah, okay. So there is around 12 Asian economics like China, Hong Kong, India, Indonesia, Korea, Malaysia, Pakistan, Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam. So we will focus about Malaysia. So in early 1990, the percentage, the ratio of the Malaysia is around 20.6%, while it increased in 2000, which is about 34.5%, and in 2009 it is decreased, falling off a bit, is around 32.2%. So all right, sir. So even though Malaysia tried to increase their export on service industry, because service industry sector make an important contributions to GDP in most countries as well as in Malaysia. So it helps to providing jobs, inputs and public services for the economy. Moreover, trade in services can improve economic performance and provide a range of traditional and new export opportunities. That's all from me, sir. Next.
Okay. Slide 11. Slide 11. Hello. Okay. I'll present this table. The table shown the service sector from 2010 until 2020. As we can see from the table, electric, gas, and water contribute for 5.3% in 2010 and decreased to 4.7% and 4.1%. So I'll continue, sir. Okay. Totally, average growth rate in value added for service sector achieved 6.3% in Rancangan Malaysia ke-10.
In 2014, the services sector contributed 53.5% to GDP. As shown in the diagram, the services sector remained the main source of employment, providing 8.5 million jobs, which is 60. 60.9% of total manpower consumption. Guna tenaga. Service. Service sector remain the main source.
Okay, I will continue to with advantage or strength of service sector based economy. First thing first, an important strength of service sector based on service sector is that they are able to adapt to the changing needs of the consumers much quicker than primary and secondary sectors. Service sector can give faster and more flexible adjustment in times of economic crisis or downturn. It also minimizes environmental degradation from heavy industry, reduce the material and energy consumption. Besides, it allows for faster economic development which follows the traditional pattern and consumer-oriented product for their satisfaction. Lastly, service sector has enhancement of knowledge based on the service which is evolving with the passage of time. Next. For the weakness of the service sector-based economy, based on Far East Goal 2003, weakness of service sector is considered to have two major problems. There are low productivity and low major problems. The low productivity and low capital intensity. Service sector appears to have low capital intensity due to the fact that in order to produce a service product, did not have to possess production lines like the heavy industry. Besides, service sector also more dependability on other countries for goods that makes trade increase because of more important and less export of goods. Last but not least, manufacturing jobs have been lost to outsourcing of more skilled employees and workers are gone.
Assalamualaikum. First, I want to
say sorry because I can open the camera because my internet has problem today. So to proceed with my presentation, I want to describe about the topic that my group need to present, which is, can service sector be a reliable engine for Malaysia's economy? The first point is to promote further growth, Malaysia should place more emphasis on its manufacturing sector rather than its services sector. Manufacturing has been the main source of new productive knowledge. Many technological innovations are driven by demands for practical solutions in the productive, especially in manufacturing sector. Little knowledge is created through pure knowledge activities, and if you get rid of manufacturing, and soon you will lose the knowledge as well. Although a number of rich and poor countries had experienced a process known as deindustrialization, it doesn't mean that in manufacturing is now less important. What I want to say here is manufacturing sector cause more effect than services sector, especially in Malaysia. Okay, I want to proceed with my point. Second point is, what matters is not what you produce, but how you produce it. There has been deindustrialization, but this is not because we are producing or consuming less manufactured goods. Countries are consuming ever more manufactured products, and many are also producing more in physical terms. Share of manufacturing looks shrunken mainly because its productivity rises faster and therefore its relative prices fall. In contrast, productivity rises more slowly in services, which also makes it become more expensive. So the main reason services sector cannot be a reliable engine for Malaysia's economy because the prices and productivity that rises, which is service sector, rises more slowly than manufacturing sector, and the price also becomes more expensive. So the next point is, deindustrialization will have a negative consequence for a national economy in the long run. Deindustrialization will have a negative consequence for a national economy in the long run. There will be slowdown in overall productivity growth due to the shrinking share of manufacturing. Deindustrialization will also cause greater balance of payments problem due to the low tradability of services, which is particularly problematic for developing countries, as they need a stable supply of foreign exchanges if they are to import advanced technologies such as machines and technical consultancy. The next point is, the only way for a country to develop is to have more productive technologies. While Malaysia is developing some high-end services, it should develop manufacturing further by developing national technologies capabilities. Not necessarily national brand names like what Korea or Japan did. Singapore and Taiwan showed that you can actually reach quite a high level of development without actually having national brand names like Samsung or Sony. Nation needs to have national capabilities that make foreign companies locate high-end activities inside its border. Next point is, Malaysia or any other country no need to make a fetish out of manufacturing. The reason is, what matters is not what you produce, like the previous point, but how you produce it. For the example, Philippines is a good reminder of this. The Philippines has only about $2,000 GDP per capita income, despite being the most high-tech economy in the world on one indicator, which is high-tech exports as a share of total manufactured exports because it doesn't control the technologies at all. Okay, the last point, which is another example from other country. So the next example is Netherlands. Despite having one of the highest population densities in the world, is the third Okay, next, Switzerland. Okay, about Switzerland. Switzerland ranks second in manufacturing value added, which is a basic indicator of a country level of industrialization. The last example, India. Many believe that India is supposed to be the success story of trade specialization and shows the way forward for nation whose manufacturing sector cannot compete with the level of China. I think that's all.
Thank you, Doctor. Again, sorry for the presentation.
Thank you, Doctor. Sorry for our bad presentation.